Hey, Paul here. We're going to dig into some more pros steroid cycles. Today we're going to take a look at Dorian Yates. He's been pretty open about what he's done. I know a lot of people don't believe him because he was the original mass monster. They think he was doing more than what he was, but he just doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would bullshit about things. I don't know why he would make stuff up. And also, you have to keep in mind what people consider a lot back then is a pretty moderate. You got dudes at your local gym that are blasting more than what Dorian Yates was. Things have changed. What he was using back then was pretty standard amongst pros. So just something to keep in mind. Before we dig into it, please take the time to like and subscribe. The more people I get subscribing, the better. YouTube loves me, and the more they show my videos. I really appreciate it if you would take the time to subscribe if you find my information helpful. I'll keep cranking out videos. And I get a lot of people watching, but not many people subscribing, so it would mean a lot to me if you did subscribe. Share it with friends if you think it's helpful. So Dorian Yates cycle, there was an interview I can't remember where it was, but I got the information from, but he's talked about this several times. About what he did. And he had talked about, this was, off season, he said that what he would run, and presumably this was year round off season, but, he said his typical, after he won the Olympia, he said that his typical off season cycle was 750 milligrams of sustanon test. It's a test blend if you don't know what it is. Which really doesn't sound like a lot. He would run 500 milligrams of DECA a week and 500 to 600 milligrams of DECA a week and 50 milligrams of D-ball per day. He said he would run GH. He didn't use GH until he turned pro, and I think he said it was his second year after he turned pro. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I recall. He also did something weird with the GH where he'd run 5 days on, 2 days off. I don't know why. I don't think people understood the insulin sensitivity issues and whatnot back then, but maybe it was just financial reasons. But he would run 8 units of GH, 5 days on, 2 days off, and he didn't use it until he turned pro. So it was a pretty basic cycle. The 750 milligrams of sustanon makes sense because the pharmaceutical grade sustanon that he would have been getting at the time in Europe was 250 milligrams per ampule. Most of the European gear at that time would come in ampules. I would assume that he said 500 milligrams of DECA, but that doesn't make any sense to me because the DECA that they used at that time, I believe, was dosed at 200 milligrams per ampule. So he was probably taking 3 of those a week as well. So 750 milligrams of test, 600 milligrams of DECA, 50 milligrams of D-ball per day. So we're talking about here, 1350, about 1600 milligrams, like a gram and a half total gear per week that he was running at his biggest. I saw somewhere where he was talking about his first cycle was 100 milligrams of primobolan and 20 milligrams of D-ball per day. He was running 100 milligrams of primo a week. He said sometimes he would use Primo instead of DECA in the off season as well. I know a lot of guys back then loved Primobolan. That seems, I don't know why, I know a lot of people think it's bullshit, but as hard as I got trained and as meticulous he was with his diet, there's no reason you couldn't get big off of that, especially if you're taking properly dosed pharmaceutical grade anabolics. For pre-contest, he said that he was doing test prop 300 milligrams a week. That also makes sense to me because it was 100 milligrams per day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. He said he would switch to his pre-contest protocol 12 weeks out from a show. He would drop the D-ball and use Anavar 50 milligrams per day. Parabolan, which was just the European trend back then, 220 milligrams per week. I know that sounds weird to you, 220 milligrams per week, but they were dosed in 76 milligram ampules. So he was taking that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 days a week, along with his test prep. So we were talking about we're talking about 76 milligrams, so 1 ampule per day. I think this was also incorrect. He said 500 milligrams of Primobolan a week. The Primobolan back then was dosed at 100 milligrams of the Bear that everybody was taking. I think that was Bear they used then. So it was probably more than likely 600 milligrams per week. He said 500, but Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so 2 ampules of that. He was also doing the same protocol with the GH. Once again, he said he did not take GH until he turned pro. He said he was taking 40 micrograms of clenbuterol, and he said he took T3. He didn't specify the amount of T3 that he took. Back then, there weren't a whole bunch of fat burners like people take now. He was a pretty lean guy, so he probably didn't need much. He said he also used Halotest in the last 4 weeks before prep, 20 milligrams per day, which is a pretty mild dose. He did talk about, everybody talked about his roid gut, and he had a huge gut, and talked about insulin. He swears he only took insulin 1 off season, and it just made him feel like shit. He said he ran, I guess Milos Sarcev helped him with his insulin protocol, but he says he only used it 1 off season, and he said he thought it was his worst look coming into the Olympia. I'm not sure which year it was he used it, but he says he only used insulin 1 off season, and I guess going into contest prep. But I don't know, the roid gut or the GH gut thing, I think has been overblown. I think a lot of it was just the massive amounts of food those guys were eating back then, especially protein. Dudes are eating less protein now. It was not uncommon in the 90s for people to be eating 500-600 grams of protein per day, which is insane when you think about it. No, people aren't pounding that much protein now. And I know Dorian was a big eater. From his diets I've seen, he was eating between 5,500 and 6,000 calories per day in the off season, from what I recall. Don't quote me on that, but I could do something up on his off-season diet at some point. But that's what I recall seeing. It was somewhere in that range. But this all seems like very realistic stuff to me. The dosings make sense to me. I know they might seem low, and people might think they're full of shit, but the total doses make sense to me because of the way the pharmaceutical grade anabolics were packaged at the time in ampules, and that they were taking them Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So, that his doses that he talks about make perfect sense to me, considering that, because, logically that's how that you would probably take it at that time. Anyway, I appreciate you watching my video. If you have questions, please feel free to ask them in the comment section. I'll answer as best I can. If there's other videos you'd like me to make, I'd be happy to make them as well. I am taking suggestions. I'm open to suggestions. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, I am at Paul K. Barnett on Instagram. Have a great day.